All right, so welcome to the first ever Write More Personality or workshop. This is going to be fun. We're going to be speaking to Nick Gaudio, who I first discovered when I subscribed to Reb's emails. And I'd been on their list for a while because I used Reb and just kind of using the service. And then it was right around December of last year. The personality really started to change. And I think it was the gift card promo was the first time I was like, this is an amazing email. This is amazing. This is fantastic. And they got better and better. And I subscribed to one of them. I replied to one of them just saying like how much I appreciated it. And as a copywriter, I was blown away and amazed at the fact that they let the writer do that much. And Nick was the one that replied to me. So it was fun. We started a little friendly conversation back and forth, chatted a few times over LinkedIn. And when I kicked off this course and I said I need to bring in some expert guests, Nick was by far the first person that came to mind. He's the genius of what he does is he puts personality behind what could be a very bland, very prescriptive, transactional type of email. And he really brought it to life. I've since discovered that he also writes for the Chive, which is one of my favorite brands. So we're going to talk a little bit about that, the difference between his daily newsletters for the Chive and his more the occasional newsletters for Reb, weighing the differences between the two and really kind of how much you can get away with, and also how much of that is his and his style. So Nick, welcome.
Thank you, Justin. I appreciate it. I'm glad to be here, and I'm hoping to answer any questions you guys might have about my process or anything like that. I'm ready to go. So, whatever questions you might have, let's jump in.
I'm going to switch my camera a little bit here. Why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about your backstory, how you got started, and all that good stuff.
Sure. I was a undergraduate engineering major. I took a poetry class and I wrote I wrote two poems. I was actually on work study in the English department. I wrote two poems for this class. And one was really like schmaltzy and like love stuff. And the other was just like filthy, just like really dirty. And I had a guy that was there. His name was Nick Black. And he read both and he's like, I'm going to destroy this one. And then you submit this one. And that's what I did. And it blew the door open in the class, and I got addicted to that feeling. I'd always been a reader, but I never really considered myself a writer. But I got really addicted to that like performative feeling, you know?
Yeah.
And then I took it really seriously. I was the editor in chief of my undergrad lit journal. Did poetry slams and all that kind of stuff. And then I applied to grad school. I actually was engaged at the time, and I only applied to grad schools that my then fiance applied to. One was the University of Michigan, where she wanted to go. And I was like, I'll throw in my hat there. It's actually a pretty good program. I went there, and she ended up not going there. She ended up going to Ohio State. We ended up breaking up. So it's actually kind of fitting because we went to rival schools. I ended up graduating there in the bottom of the recession, and I moved in with my parents. The valley of my life, the nadir. And I had $100 to my name when I moved back to West Virginia, where I'm from. And I saw an ad in the newspaper for a obituary writer. And I went in and applied for that and said, hey, look, I have a master's degree. Please give me work. And he's like, I think you might be overqualified, but I'm like, I'm desperate for anything, please. So I went in there, I got hired. And everybody was part-time there. It's one of the favorite things that anybody's ever said to me was there's a lady there. She worked with abusive dudes who were like out of control. And she said, in the morning I work with assholes and at night I bury them. And ever since then I was like, that's the best thing I've ever heard. So anyways, I worked there. And then I started impressing the guy with like my writing skill. Cause I had a master's degree. So he's like, yeah, I guess we can let you cover a story or two. I ended up covering stuff just because no one was there because like the news industry is dead. There was it was back when Occupy Wall Street happened.
Yep.
You remember when that? And there was a Occupy Cumberland, which was in Maryland, which was right outside of West Virginia. And there was three people. And I still covered it, and they put it in the paper, and it ended up getting like some feedback, and people were enjoying it. Ended up working my way up to a nighttime editor there. And I did that for a few years, and we turned that paper into something decent. I got kind of sick of living in that area, so I literally wrote down 6 cities, and Austin was number 2. And I rolled a dice one night with my buddies, and I rolled a 2, and I literally moved down with like very little money to my name into Austin, desperate for work, and I was told, I met with this guy, and he's like, if you write, and I at the time I was experimenting with comedy writing. He's like, you should try to apply to the Chive. And I was like, yeah, sure, what the hell, I'll give it a shot. So I put it in a resume, it didn't work. And then he's like, weeks went by, and he's like, there's no point in being humble, right? Like, he's like, you have to be like vivacious and bombastic and really get their attention. So I actually called the newspaper that I was working at, I used to work at, and I had made friends with the press guys. And I said, hey, can I send you a newspaper format of my resume, and can you guys run that off? And they agreed to. I had to pay a little bit of money for them to do that, but they did it. And I made like 40 or 50 copies of my resume in a newspaper format, and sent that in. And that caught the attention of their CMO, and he hired me as a product copywriter.
Very cool.
Yeah. And then after 6 months of doing that, I had started converting really well in their like t-shirt company. And then I ended up working my way up to head writer there. And then their email program was suffering really terribly. We had like 8% open rates, and just a huge list, like 3 million, 4 million people. I think it was 3.4 million actually, and 8% open rate, and just dreadful. And I said, if you guys give me like a little bit of lead time to learn HTML, I'd like to take a stab at it. And around 6 months after I had taken over the email program, it was getting 40% open rates.
Wow.
We completely revamped it. We actually used newspaper design principles. So like having a headline, like, and a masthead, and all that kind of stuff was enough to make a huge difference there. And then I kind of put myself in a position where there's not many email guys who are also comedy writers. As you know, there's probably like 10 of us, comedy, and so I kind of put myself in a good position. I saw that the CFO was leaving the Chive. I thought, if the guys who's in charge of the money here is leaving, I should probably start thinking of another outlet. And I went off on my own. I started a email copywriting firm, and I've been doing that, and they've been a client. And then
you can plug that, by the way.
Was that?
You can plug your.
It's Convict and Cannon. Super busy right now, but always willing to answer questions or whatever. That was it. And basically, my wife got pregnant. I was working 80 hours a week, and I was like, I need like a 40-hour a week job, just a job where I can leave at 5 o'clock and be done and like hang out with my family. And it just so happened that my wife's law office is right down the street from Rev, and I kind of threw out like a, hey, are you guys hiring anything? And they were hiring an email guy, and I guess the rest is history there.
Tell me the URL for your.
It might be broken, honestly. I haven't. Convictandcannon.com.
Convict.
Yes.
Convict and
Cannon double N, which I really regret using as the name of mine, because people do this the single N.
Here we go. I got it. I'll pop it in the URL or in the chat.
Yeah.
Convict and Cannon. What's the story behind the name?
Actually, it was just that I live right between. They're my cross streets in Austin.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
One of the things I really like about your story is the way that you said that you applied the newspaper techniques to the Chive emails. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing that you learned most of that working for a newspaper.
Sure.
So,
yeah.
And taking something that you didn't necessarily think was going to be your career and all that, but learning HTML and things through that, and that's really
sort of like I actually it's kind of a backwards way of doing it, because I learned a lot of the stuff that I was doing about and having success at the Cumberland newspaper from internet stuff. Like I was writing headlines that they had never written before. Like I was trying to be punny and funny and interesting. And then they were starting to get like, I remember George Takai shared one of my, at the time that was like, you know,
It's a
I
big
was in a
deal.
small town newspaper. Yeah, it was man shot and hand finger suspect was the headline. Yeah. And his caption was "Oh my," which was, you know,
Typical
in
George
my
Scott.
life. It really did. It's like on my like list of
Yeah, that's high
life
praise.
achievements.
That's wow, man. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Um, so when you started applying some of the punny things to uh, the newspaper where it wasn't expected, was there
mhm.
any pushback?
Absolutely, absolutely. It was like good old boys from West Virginia in their 60s and 70s. It was like if you wanted to have like a like like a like an allegory of the newspaper industry, it was exactly the cast you'd put in, like just good old boys who didn't want to change anything. It was just that I suddenly had control of the newspaper at night, and then I did it a few times, and then people started commenting on it to the editor, and he was like, "Hey, the people are really liking this. You should do more of it." And I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, I guess I will then. I'm glad you're
That's
not mad at me." I actually remember the first thing I actually did was there was a theater in town that lost a wall, it had like crumbled, and the headline was "Exit Stage Right," and and I thought, "Oh no, this is going to get me fired." And the next day, he loved it, so I was like, "Thank God."
so. It's funny. So Holly actually asked if there's. She was like 2 headline pros. I did the headline project, but I like yours better than mine. You actually get a chance to have more fun. Yours is almost like daily news style, where you can kind of border on like groan-worthy humor.
Mhm.
Um, so any tricks for coming up with that type of stuff?
I can give you like some tools that I love. I love rhymezone.com.
Yep.
So if you get a hook, you can get like words that are near it, right? And then you can use those words in an idiom dictionary. So I do a lot of those juxtapositions. And then, there's also like word association dictionaries where you can kind of just type in a concept, and then it comes up with all the words associated with it, and you can kind of pull from there. Um, and those three kind of tools together really make my life a lot easier.
I haven't used the word association dictionary.
Yeah.
Is that do you know the URL
Word
for that one?
It's wordassociations.net. I
Oh,
think
that's easy enough.
/en. Yeah, super easy. And then there's a phrase dictionary that I really like called the Phrase Thesaurus, and it's phrases.org.uk.
Yep, I think I've got that one. Word association.net.
Because I know a lot of idioms and I know a lot of phrases, but I don't know all of them, you know. Um,
No, that's really cool. So, do you start with that, or do you just kind of let yourself go loosey goosey and come
I,
up with it, or do you go
honestly, I
first?
try to get a really good headline, because then that can actually determine the way that I approach everything else. So a really good headline, I always try to like use the subhead to do all the heavy lifting,
Yeah,
right? So the emotional pull should come from the headline, or like the moment where you're like, what is this? Because you're really just trying to get people to sort of put the blinders on,
yeah.
right? Like close in on just those words, and then the subhead should sort of do a little bit more of that, but also kind of make a promise for what they're about to read. And without that subhead, it's really hard. And if you're not going to do a subhead, then you got to kind of let your headlines be a little bit more descriptive, in my opinion.
So, with the way that you phrase that, do you write the headline before you write the piece?
Yes, absolutely.
Oh, wow. All right.
Hmm.
I never do that. I always start
Yeah.
with a how to blank
Hmm.
as a total placeholder.
Yeah.
Interesting. So
Hmm.
you really do work top down, like on
Yeah.
Emory.
Hmm. Yeah. It's like
Um,
just like sort of like trying to get in the experience of the reader as they go through the page itself. You know.
so so Karine says, me too. She starts with a shitty first one and then finalizes it after I write the piece. That's how I do it. So
That happens a lot too. But for the most part, my headline is the thing that dictates what I do thereafter. So
that's
like
wow.
the Klingon piece was actually something completely different. After I can't remember exactly what the verbiage was, but I ended up changing that completely based on feedback that I'd gotten from my coworkers.
Yeah. It's funny because you posted a draft, and we'll show this afterward.
Hmm.
You posted a draft in LinkedIn, like, not sure if I'm going to get away with this one. And I was like, this is funny, but I don't think he's going to be able to get this one past the censors. And you
Mm-mm.
actually got most of it, though.
Yeah, the part that I thought was actually going to piss them off was that I made a joke about Americans
Yeah,
not
that's,
knowing basic English.
yep.
Um, and they liked that. They thought it was okay. They thought that I had hedged it enough with "Please don't hurt me," um, and kind of made that a little less threatening, right? It
Yeah.
was the headline that was sort of like that they didn't like, and they thought it was sort of like you content get better, more people now, or something like that.
Yep.
And my boss's boss was like, this reads sort of like pidgin English. He's like, that could be offensive. Please change it. And I was like, okay, yeah, I get that. It could be read as pidgin English. And what didn't even go through my mind, but I'm a white guy,
Yeah.
and that stuff doesn't register with me. So I
Yeah.
was like, well, how am I going to change that? We can break that down later, but
We
it's
will.
weird that the parts that you think are going to be scandalous, and then they land.
Yeah. There's so many things that you just touched on there. You did talk about with the sensitivity to race and everything, and we're going to talk about that now because I know that you're working on a Black Lives Matter for Rev, which clearly is going to take much more thought about that. The other thing is, so we talked about top-down copy, which I really want to get into, and I'm betting that people do here as well. But I guess to lead into that, let's focus on Rev. Tell me about the voice of Rev when you started and how you got it to where it is now.
Okay. I would call it fragmented and boring, and purpose driven, but boring, and feature driven and boring.
Getting a theme here.
That's about a bit way I describe it. I mean, they're a group of MIT engineers, super bright guys, but like very much into like, well, if I tell you it's an 8.237B capacitor, obviously you're going to want to buy it. I'm like, well, most people don't understand that concept, and we have to change from feature focus to benefit focus.
Yep.
And I told you this, and I didn't mention this in my like little narrative, but like I got hired the same day for Expedia that Rev offered me a job. I'm doing basically the same thing. Rev was a great product that had complete creative control. Expedia was a giant that was like, you're going to make it one email a week, and you're going to follow our parameters. And they asked me, they were going to pay me more, but I said, I can't. I don't really. I had to go to my wife and say, hey, can I not take that job because it seems like I want to die.
It's important to
And
get
she's
that
like, yeah,
side.
okay, do what you want to do. But that was the reason that I went in, because I think they knew that that's what I was going to come and do. But it was owned by a lot of people. It was so there was no unified voice, and it was all just very much like just drill people with the facts, and hopefully that convinced them um, to purchase stuff. And it was wildly unsuccessful. I mean, they came in and they said, I don't think they would mind now because I can keep it kind of general, but they were basically making like single double digits a day on their email program,
Oh,
just no money whatsoever.
right.
And they said, if you could make $100,000 in a year, that would be a major improvement for us. And I did that in like 2 months.
I was gonna say that
And
seems like a
yeah,
really low goal. That's
yeah, it was really well. I mean, they were just like build it, and a lot of the stuff that they wanted was transactional stuff that wasn't going to be attributed to me.
yeah.
So the stuff that you saw was so much later in the restructuring. I had them redesign pretty much all of their transactional emails, their welcome email, and everything is built by engineers, so it takes forever. I have to go through like a Jira ticket, um, like several brief processes. It's kind of a laborious process. We've since shifted that once they saw that there was value in it. But engineers really like process.
So when you jumped from the single digits to hitting your goal in 2 months, did anything about the product change?
No, nothing. The
It's all
Martech
just
stack didn't even
communication.
change. We were still using Mailchimp.
That's crazy. Man, good for you. That's
Yeah,
impressive.
thank you, man.
It's
And I think that was
yeah.
like, I think that is when I can start pointing to and say, look, guys, I know what I'm doing. Please let me do the crazy stuff that I want to do.
So now, what was that approval process like? How did you get that?
Well, my boss has a boss who has a boss who has a boss. So, in a company that's only like 100 people, 5 bosses is a lot, right? So at first it was sort of like getting like sort of like a rubber stamp from my boss, and then getting a rubber stamp from his boss, and then going up to that third boss who I knew had some sort of power, right? And saying, hey, I'm getting pretty much complete creative license from these guys. I want you to buy in. And here's what I'm doing now, and here's what I'm attempting to do, and here's my, and going through this whole like ideology change, right? Like I was like, here's Wendy's Twitter. Here's what they're doing. There's sort of a best in class, brand play that works, and showing like that it's not just about the win of a single email, which is great, but also about the win of a program. Let's say I send an email out and I get a ton of opens, but no clicks and no conversions, but everybody loves it and they want to keep reading my stuff. Part of my goal and what I told them was like top of mind marketing is really important for you guys because you otherwise don't have it.
Right.
They assumed that making a really great product was going to be enough to have people remember to come back. But I was like, people forget that they'll type in, because it's a transcription and caption company. They might need transcriptions and captions in July, type in it into Google, find you guys at the top, and then use you, love it. And then in December, do the same thing and not find you because you got outbid. So in that meantime, if I can sort of keep that conversation open and keep people thinking about you, that's a win unto itself. It's harder to track, but you'll know it when it's working, when it's working.
That's interesting. Yeah, sorry if you guys are picking up. I got my kids yelling in the background, so I saw the
Mine are literally just about to get home. So
nice. No, there's some really interesting stuff. So basically, you really just had to earn it. And I remember, I think it was right after the holidays when you kind of announced like we're back and talking more frequently. You actually put yourself in an email.
I did.
Yeah, you're like, I'm a one-man show, and I just had a kid, and like you got notes about like you put yourself in about having the baby and all that.
Yeah. So we had our second at the end of February. May, she's great. And I went the entire month of March with my paternity leave, which was great. Rev was amazing. They ended up giving me quite a bit of time, and I was super happy. Thank you, Kareen. Anyway, I took off that whole month, and that's when COVID-19 happened. So and everybody was addressing it. I kept getting these emails from everybody in these uncertain times and so on. I was kind of jealous, and so I came back a little early from paternity leave just so I could write an email saying, look, this is the reason you by now I think that we've established rapport with our readership. Our open rates are really good, and the respond rate's crazy. I mean, I have like 200 or 300 people who I talk to now every time I send an email. They say good job again or something. Awesome. And they're just like my friends now. It's really fun. But
I started with you.
Yeah, exactly. And anyway, so I basically was said, look, I figured you guys would expect us to hear from us about this because everybody's saying something. And here's the honest truth. I had a baby. It's terrifying to have a baby in this scenario. And then I level with people and said, look, we're just a transcription and caption company. We're not doctors. We have, no scientific, we're not qualified to make any statements about that. But here's the things that we are doing. And I went to our product team and said, here's the things I would like you guys to do. And then we kind of, made some sort of agreement based on that, right? They didn't agree to everything because some of it was just outlandish, but for the most part, they're like, okay, yeah, we can double down on people, our transcript library, so people didn't have to pay the New York Times or pay, a news outlet to see what people were saying in a COVID-19 press conference, and we did all these other things, and then and that was basically it. And it just, people really liked it. It was sort of this moment where I was like, what are all these companies doing out there? And why aren't they being successful? And it was sort of like because they were posturing, because they weren't offering any sort of risk, because they weren't really offering any sort of action. So we're going to do all the opposite of that. And it was very successful. And I think a lot of people felt touched by it.
Yeah. And, even following you on LinkedIn, you really took a stand against that. I remember you showcased a few emails, like, this is all about you. This is nothing to do with the consumer. This is you. You said posturing right there. You're like, look what we're doing. Look at all the great things that we are doing. And you're like, no. Look at how much we've been able to help these people succeed. And you really did showcase it in a very, very different way.
Thank you.
It seems like copywriting 101, but it's like most of these brands forgot all that. And
Yeah, I mean, I think that a lot of the time, what happens and what didn't happen there was that C-level guys and the execs sort of start saying, we can't be too. We just got to check off all the boxes, right? Like uncertain times. We're all into this together. Family, whatever, right? And then people are, whenever I talk creative writing, I used to tell this to my class, like people can smell bullshit, and that's what. Like that's why like so many writers like lean into autobiography is because that sort of mellows that out, right? Like it's sort of like it legitimizes it because it comes from a real place.
yeah,
And that's why most of these things that I'm writing now, I'm learning and seeing like, and I'm also training the list a little bit, right? I'm sort of trying to get the list to be more and more intrigued by who's behind the writing.
yeah. I'm curious if you've seen a boost in your open rates on that too.
Open rates have been great. I mean, anywhere from 30 to 40%.
Wow, for a big brand, that's huge.
Yeah. So people really like it, and people who don't they leave, and that's about it. I mean, every now and then you'll get people who want to be outraged. I think I think all copywriters now who
Yeah.
are taking many risks are having a tough time with that. But I no matter what I send, I've really learned that no matter what it is, no matter how benign I think it is, it will upset somebody.
True. The great thing about what you've done, and I think really what everybody in this program is trying to establish, is where the sender name becomes more important than the subject line. People will open it because it's from you.
Right.
And I love that there's that element to it. And I mean, that's really what the whole course is how do you become more important than the subject line?
Well, we just hired somebody in the email program at Rev, and just to double click on your point, like she's like, why don't we just like make an emoji only subject line? I'm like, we could trick people into opening and get 50% open rate, but like then they're going to get inside the email and be like, what the hell is this? And then they're going to feel betrayed. Like you're not really establishing a relationship with the reader when you do stuff like that, right? So you have to stay well within the bounds of like you're not trying to hoodwink them.
That's true for sure. Matter of fact, I have one email which I had someone complain about. It actually does well, and I was careful with this. Like out of all the emails, I really have only had one person complain about it, but it was something that I was worried about when I sent it, and it's actually based off of a gallery name from the Chive, and in the Chive, it's like people looking at mirrors, and it's your reflection. I like it. The subject that I have is your writing. I like it. And then I talk about the way that I like to analyze writing. And it's appropriate, but I did have someone unsubscribed and says, I feel like you tricked me. Like they thought that it was a one-on-one email and then they were disappointed that it wasn't. So there's that fine line. And I like what you said there about, we can trick them into opening, but that's not the point. So that's pretty tough.
And that's what I sort of I always like if I ever had disciples, which I don't really have those, but like there's the things like establishing trust and establishing a reason to talk to people and actually being very clear about why you're emailing people if it's not clear, because I really feel like there is like this covenant between you and your subscriber. Like they're saying, okay, I'm willing to hear you out. I'm willing to get in, allow you to bother me. Please don't do that. And then you don't want to do that. You want to like provide value in some way, even if it's by making it just a joke or lighthearted or interesting.
Yeah. And Belinda's saying, I go for clarity over cleverness if I'm ever uncertain. And I think that's a wise move. You and I talked a little bit about the price hike email that you have. I do have it, but and I can show it. You know what? Maybe I'll add it into the comments after. But the reason why I'm not going to show it is why I don't think that we can spend more time focusing on the personality aspect. You were saying yourself that that's got zero personality.
Sure.
And talk to me a little bit about that decision versus how do you make it fun?
So Rev in November had a huge public relations nightmare. One of their freelancers came out and said they don't pay him enough, and then it touched a nerve that already existed for Uber and Lyft and these other sort of like freelance driven economies. and Rev, which is like, a hundredth of the size of Uber, or a thousandth of the size of Uber, got the same sort of flack and all that kind of stuff against them. And they had already started in December saying we have to raise our prices a quarter, from $1 to $1.25 for per minute that we transcribe. So I was already, when they came to me, I was like, we're already really behind the 8 ball here. I've been trying to build public sentiment with the email, but like, it was terrible. And it was just the entire like atmosphere and mood at work was terrible, and everybody was really feeling terrible, to lack of a better word. So anyway, so they come to me and they say, in March we want to have this price change, and we're just going to send out like a 50-word, we're changing prices. I say, we cannot do that. We have to, the reason I think, Justin, you don't want to show it is partly because it's super long. It's like 400 words, something like that. And what it is it's basically flood the zone of humility and information. It's sort of like, we're raising our prices. We're doing it partly because of the reason where you guys said we weren't paying our freelancers enough, and we have to pay our freelancers more. But also because, we've been in this for 12 years, and, we haven't raised our prices, and, inflation and all this stuff. And then we went through and broke down, like, we're still the most cost effective by a couple dollars per minute. We're still, and we just broke it down and basically allowed everybody to click out to different blogs that described whatever concern they might have. So it was a short answer and a long answer. And what that really did for us too is something I could go back to the C-level guys and say, look, we had 10 people click freelancer concerns. We had 100 people click price concerns. We had 25 people click whatever, organizational concerns or whatever. So then I can go back to them and say, this is a little bit of a barometer of where our customer base is, in terms of what their concerns about with this price hike. So it was sort of, it was just kind of a tool in a way.
That's interesting. Was that the original idea to be able to gauge that? Like, was that strategy, or was that like an afterthought and like, oh wow, we really learned a lot?
That was my idea. Yeah, that was my idea to do that. Yeah, because but they were just like, they were literally going to be like, Revs changing their price March 1st, period. Here's what the price thing. Have any questions? Contact support. And I was like, that's just not going to ingratiate you guys. So can we try a different way? And then we did get this sort of flack, like, I can't believe you're doing this. I can't afford it, and all this stuff. And it, legitimate arguments. Yeah. But we also got positive sentiment. In fact, somebody said, I love Rev. You guys are still the best. Thank you. And that was it. Some people just said, put thank you. I completely understand. Like, we got actually like probably a 50-50 split of positive sentiment replies to negative sentiment replies, and 0 flack on social. After that was what they were expecting.
Okay, nice. I'll tell you what, because people are probably like, why won't they show it? I will show it. We'll do a quick rundown of it.
Kind of boring, but yeah.
I guess the major thing to focus on is like, it still has a folksy feel to it. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And after that, we can jump into the Klingon email. Sure. I'm sure that's not what it's called, but that's what I call it.
That's
and
fine.
Then people are asking some questions about if you write top down, if you use structures, and you write very different from me. And this was one of the interesting in our earlier conversation, that like, I was like, let's stop talking because I want to hear more about it. But you write completely opposite than I do. And it's just a really interesting style. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to go ahead and share this screen. So, I think what's important to show here is it's still very readable, short sentences, short paragraphs. It is a little bit more traditional, but it's not this giant form letter. It's not overbearing. And even this is, generally speaking, why the increase? Short answer to get even better. And I like this, how you have a short answer and a longer answer. That's actually, I didn't realize this because I didn't see this until this morning. But what I did when I sent out my basically my oops email for Zoom, I did a short version, and I was like, here's what you need to do. Like, Zoom shit the bed, and here's the new link. And then I was like, longer answer. And then I made it a little more personality filled, a Red and Stimpy gif in there. I made it more me, and more like self-deprecating. So it's funny, we actually have the same type of style there, the short answer and a longer answer.
I think this is a gesture of respect for people's time. And I think that's what they like it.
You know, that's actually a really good point. You're not scaring anyone that doesn't care about it. You're still making it digestible. But it's basically like one of the most important words or most powerful words in copy is because. And you're explaining the because. You didn't just make an announcement, prices are going up this way. You said prices are going up because. And then you really bring it in. We've drastically improved our services. And then what else? You know, it allows for industry leading turnaround. And there is more professional sounding language. So you're not, like, I actually ran this through Hemingway, and it was at, depending on the formatting, it was between grade 6 and grade 8. So it's still a relatively sophisticated email, but it does have that, that more, you know, like just and generally speaking. It's got more casual language, a little softer. Here, short answer. Is there anything else? Probably. And I like that. It's sort of non-committal, but in a friendly way. And it's not, you're not preaching. So it's just got a more casual vibe that I really like. And I'm sure that well, as we saw, your audience appreciates it. Let's go into the Klingon email. I've got this in two different, which one's the first one? So this, I think, is...
That's the edited version, right?
So do you want to start with the...
We can start with the other version. I mean, it really doesn't matter because this didn't get this. I mean, they kind of know the story now. Yeah, you content may go more far now. And basically what happened was we have a subtitling arm, right? Subtitling is different than captioning because subtitling is whenever you change the language. Captioning is just writing out the captions, you know, what's being said, right? And they're like, well, we need more people knowing that this exists. So we want you to send an email to our caption based companies to sort of sell them on the concept of subtitling. And that was pretty much all I got in my brief. And so I was like, well, maybe I can make a sort of a show not tell point to begin and catch their attention. Like, oh, what does it feel like to want to understand something, but not know the language, right? But I was like, I can't really pick a language because we have like 80 different languages. Thank you for loving this email. Yeah, so, you know, then I looked up, you know, how many people in the world know English. And then I was like, the real thrust of this email is to prove that there's so many other people out there in the world that could enjoy your content. Why not get it subtitled? It's just an easy thing to do. You send it in and get it subtitled and ship it out. So I was like, you know, the joke actually below this part, if you still have it, yeah, is the other 80% Americans. Which,
I can't believe you got away with that.
Yeah, you know, I only got one person who unsubscribed because of that joke, which I was pretty happy with.
I think it's really important, and you mentioned this earlier, but this, like, absolutely, that self-awareness right there. Right. And, you know, quite frankly, a lot of my emails, I go too far sometimes, but I acknowledge the joke. And that's actually one of the lessons that I have in the course is sometimes you can go too far, but then you break the fourth wall a little bit. And I think in the revised version, you even put yourself in there. You're like, don't hate me or something. Right. And we'll see that. But when you acknowledge it, it gives you a chance to be like, kidding, and you back off and be like, all right, I'm going to forgive you this time. Right.
And I've talked to you a little bit about this, Justin, in chat, but like there's a theory of comedy called benign violation theory. And this is a good example of it, where you violate, but you make sure that it's benign. So you violate expectations, you violate just a little bit about what people understand, but it has to be non-threatening. And the difficulty now is that everything's so threatening that it's really hard to do that benign part of the violation thing, right? And that's why people get upset, because they feel like that there's not enough benign gesturing to cover the violation part, right? No matter what, like that lady who said, I'm unsubscribing because you're un-American or whatever it was that she sent me. You know, there was nothing I could have done to make her more comfortable with making an American-based joke, because that was very like inherent to her belief system or something. Anyway, that's the sort of thing I'm thinking about whenever I'm doing that like little gesture. Yeah. I'm like, how do I make this actually benign? Because it is a little threatening at first.
It's funny. You guys thought I was nerdy with like ablaut reduplication and knowing all these like vowel and grammar rules, benign violation is something that I had never heard of. So
There's a Wikipedia. The Wikipedia page will describe it for me better than I can do it.
I don't have it here. Looking for a book that I just finished. Here, I'll show you what I've been learning comedy from.
Fart sounds.
Fart sounds. It's the reason why jokes are funny. I will say it's a very disappointing book. It's one interview question. It was like a series of interview questions sent to like 100 comics, and they all just filled it out. And this is just a compilation of the interviews. So
Okay.
disappointing book. Really funny name, good cover. I judged the book by its cover, and I was wrong.
And they got you. It's okay.
And it's funny, like even the book though, like the cover of it, and I was like, this is funny. And one of the questions is what's the reason that makes or why are jokes funny? And someone put like this really long like scientific answer, and it's like, I don't know, penguins. And then another one wrote fart sound. So basically combined the joke and came up with the title. So it's just a way of taking two different jokes, combining them, and coming up with something new. And it was enough to make me buy the book. So well done on that aspect. I realize that I'm sharing my screen and probably only that small. So
I thought it was a Bible for a second.
What's that?
I thought you were going to hold up a Bible.
No, I don't have that. I do have a comedy Bible over here and dad jokes. Dr. Seuss. I got a whole bunch of books over here. All right. So is there anything else that we should break down on this?
I liked it. The ending was fun. I had a fun time writing that, but I don't know if there's anything like you can glean from that.
Okay. So let's look at the revision. This is the one that went out.
Mm-hmm.
And I will zoom in a little bit. So yeah, I wonder if I can do a side-by-side. What was the original one? See, it's not easy when you don't know the language. So the subtitle stayed the same, plus that. I am curious, is that really Klingon?
It is, and it's to get to the other side.
All right.
I don't know Klingon. I had to ask one of my nerd buddies.
That's awesome, and I appreciate the fact that you actually did it. And if there's anyone on here that speaks Klingon, let's see if we can actually trust his buddy, or if he just said something really offensive. Fun little aside story on that. In the late 90s, when people were relying on the internet for transcriptions for like tattoos, there are dozens of people, actually hundreds of people in the US that have Japanese Japanese characters that actually says the name of the transcription company, like the website where they got it transcribed, rather than the actual transcription of the word, because that's the way that it presented itself. So it would be like having Google Translate in Japanese tattooed on you. So this, you talked about, your boss's concern about how it could be taken. So we just you reverse the punchline of it. Rather than make the punchline the headline, you made it a question and answer. Mm-hmm. So, and that's the rest of the email stayed the same.
Pretty much, yeah. I mean, I think you can go down. They did express concern. I don't know if it's maybe I.
No, you just sent me that.
Oh, okay. Well, yeah. Pretty much. Other than I just said, "Please don't hurt me" in the parenthesis.
That's right.
Just kidding. Please don't hurt me.
Oh, so you got rid of the head and changed it to "Please don't hurt me."
Right.
Okay, and that's benign.
Because my boss had expressed, like, maybe we're gonna piss off our 95% of our user base by doing that. It's like, okay, I'll temper it a little bit more, and I think that'll do it.
And it worked. It's the parenthetical asides that we talk about, and yeah, and
like
basically breaking the fourth wall.
People that sent to, and one person got upset. So I think that's a success.
I'd say that's pretty
enough to be outraged to reply. That's the.
It is true. Nice. I'm going to stop the share because that covers that. Does anyone have any questions in the chat? I'm catching up on this. What's the Klingon punchline? We talked about that. We've got, as a Canadian, I approve and appreciate the joke. Um, I'm not sure. What is it, the Canadian Klingon? Question for later after the Klingon review. I noticed that a lot of people use GIFs to be the person, to be the personality in some of their emails. Any thoughts on using GIFs cleverly among developing voice and personality?
I mean, I'm going to be a snob about this. I think GIFs really are lazy. I know they're not the most. I have a lot of friends who aren't funny, and then they use the same GIFs over and over again. And I guess that's colored my. If you do it well, I think you can use it. But I've never been one to use it. I think that also GIFs can bog down load times in emails. And if you can get it to a good size, then yeah, you can use them. It really just depends, honestly.
There's something to be said with the load times because Chubby's, the shorts company, they've got a hilarious brand. And I was on their email list and I unsubscribed to them because their emails took forever to load because they would just be GIF after GIF after GIF. And like literally I'd be sitting there for like 7 seconds and it would still be loading. That's a long time to be staring at a blank screen on your phone.
Yeah, I think that the way that I would say is with a GIF, if you can come up with something that's not already well established and I don't know if everybody knows the fellow kids concept, like hello fellow kids.
With Steve Buscemi?
Yes, and there's a subreddit called fellow kids where people go to like place examples of bad copywriting and examples of corporate trying to seem hip, and a lot of the time it's just using GIFs that have since fallen out of like the cultural milieu, or have misused or used something that's just dead. So if you want to use something novel and fresh, I think that's more like less of a risk actually than using like that the little girl who's sort of like could you not with the blonde hair. She's great. She actually looks like my daughter, but so I have an affinity for her. But it's been used and it's been used and it's been used. So it's almost like using a cliche in lieu of something interesting.
Like Belinda just said, I'm trying so hard, it's hurting everyone. So Isai, I see your question. We're going to get into this. I know Karine is like GIFs are lazy. GIFs equal lazy. Them's fighting words. And I don't think that you're against all GIFs.
No.
I think you're against lazy GIFs, and I think you're against people that aren't funny, relying on the GIF to
be funny for them.
To be funny for them. I personally I have looser feelings, but I still do have the same feelings, and I do agree with Nick on this. I always say like you got to go deep in the GIF hole. You got to go down and down and down and find something interesting and put a spin on it. Lazy GIFs are lazy. And I also, personally, I like to put caption under the GIFs to almost like get the double whammy and put my own spin on it.
Who's really great at that is Cracked. If you read a Cracked article, they have a really good captioning kind of double whammy where their pictures tend to be very funny. I don't even know if they're still around. I think they actually buckled under the internet bubble bursting about a year ago, but they're a great one to learn from.
Yeah. And I think what's also interesting with Cracked is because I think it's based originally on magazine, and, magazines, you had the word bubbles. Your word economy had to be super tight, and it's really designed for captions. So that's one of the things that I love about just figuring out where people's foundations are. And like mine was comic books and children's books. So it's always the short writing, the shorter cadence. And then as I learned to write the shorter Facebook ads, the shorter sentence, long form Facebook ads, my style was perfect for that. It all really does all depend on influence.
Yeah, I really hesitate to give like hard and fast rules about GIFs because I really have seen them make me laugh and be awesome and great. But like I said, if it's like the top page of Giphy, whenever you type it in, it's probably already been used to death.
Yes. Yeah. Holly just said his favorite GIF was the one that I used about the alphabet of the kids drawing about the ways to die. It's Edward Gorey, the Gashly Crumb Tinies, which is one of my all-time favorite books. It's basically just like A is for Abby who swallowed a bone, and it's like basically just awful ways of kids perishing. It's dark and I love it. And someone made a GIF of the entire thing. And it takes like probably about 45 seconds to watch the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I got so many comments like, where did you find this? I was like, oh, it's part of my childhood, which is dark. My kids thought it was hilarious. It is hilarious. I love it. My son loves it. There's more. The author is Edward Gorey, by the way. He's got another book, which I love, is The Epiplectic Bicycle, which is just this nonsensical tale. And it goes like chapter 1, chapter 2, chapter 6, chapter N, chapter 436. And it makes my son laugh every time when we go through that. Isai had a question. And I think this is for you, Nick. Is it easier to punch up copy that has good bones? And how do we structure an email so it's easier to make it better with my tips from basically the editing punch ups? So how do you start? And this, I think, is where we can really get into some of the good stuff. Because like you write top down, and I'm curious about your thoughts on structures and formulas.
Yeah, I'm actually I'm a terrible one to learn from in that way. I learned and I did this in grad school when I started writing fiction, and it makes me very limited in how far I can go in the fiction I write, because I write in a pyramid style, I guess you'd say. I write one paragraph and then read it, and then I write the next paragraph, and then I read 1 and 2, and then I write the next paragraph, and I write 1, 2, 3, and that kind of takes a longer time. But I always try to like restart every time I read again. So it's like very there's not a lot of form to that. It's just like I get really where I see like the form in my brain, I guess, or I see the product in my brain, and I try to make it structure it like that. And then my editing process is very, very limited. I know where the jokes are, and then I edit the jokes as they need to be edited.
So, how much time do you spend thinking about a piece before you, like, do you do mental drafts and like, exactly what the flow is going to be before you start writing?
I think that it's like now it's a lot faster than it used to be, because I'm used to like knowing what's going to be good and knowing that I'm on the right path. But like before, it took forever. I mean, I've been writing emails for quite a long time now, and writing copy and all this other stuff for 15 years or whatever. So at first it would take, I mean, like the same sort of email right now that takes me 2 hours would probably take almost double that. And I start again. It starts for me with a headline, because it's like once I get that, I'm like, oh, I'm in the mood. I have almost the tone, and I have the audience kind of all figured out in my brain once that headline hits me. And then I'm like, okay. And then I'm going to do I'm going to try to cram as much of the brief as I possibly can. It's important, and that's a benefit statement in that subhead. And then once I have that, that really can set me going. So I sort of let the header and subhead be the mast and sails to sort of carry me through the piece. But it is a plotting and not advisable way to do things if you have to do things quickly.
That's nice. I'm curious if there's anyone here posting in the comments. Does anyone else write like that? Just straight through, top down with a plan? I don't. It's very foreign to me. Like, it sounds impossible. But that's awesome that you do it. Clearly it works. And I even say this in the guide, there is no wrong way to do this. And if there was, I would have found it by now. Yeah. But like this style, I don't think that would work for me. But I love the fact that you do it and you found the way to be successful.
Yeah, I mean, it's just sort of like I write this sentence, I'm like, I just hate this, and I can't move forward until I do that, where I'm like, that next step is done. And yeah.
So let's see. Holly said, you mentioned that you have the headline be the mast, but then do things change a lot when you need to change the headline, like in the Klingon email.
Yeah, but then it really gets like prickly, because I'm like, well, I really need to come up with something that like applies this all the shit that I just read or wrote down. And that took forever to figure out that. I mean, that took like a day of thinking, like, what am I going to do? Like, I have to send this out. I have like, it was like on a Wednesday when I wrote it, and they're like, we want to send this out by Friday. So please, and then it was like Thursday night when I was like, oh, I have it. Like, I can't use a specific language, because then it'll be like, particularly, it'll be like everyone will think, oh, is this just French subtitles? I needed to pick something that was like that. That's the, sort of like the epiphany that I had. Like, oh, I can use a language that doesn't exist. really, well, it does exist, but it doesn't,
Yeah, it's fake. It's like Hobbit.
right, right.
Um, no, that's really cool.
So that was
Kareem
a,
does
it
it
was
too.
without that epiphanic moment, it really would have, I would have just been like, I guess we're gonna have to hold off on this because this email is offensive to, or like you don't think it's gonna work or whatever. So,
Yeah.
um, honestly, that's what happened, and I got lucky there. That's kind of a rare situation where I've not had to rip up the rest of the email based on that changing.
Nice. Esai just asked a question. What goals did you set up for the welcome sequence that you wrote for Rev? And what do you feel a good welcome sequence should accomplish? And what do you measure success with?
Okay. Well, I mean, revenue is always good, right?
And that
And
was one of the original goals with this.
right. And then they weren't their email program had nothing for people who signed up for a Rev account and then didn't order. They just were so sure that people were going to sign up for a Rev account and then something not happen in their lives or whatever, that they would come back or whatever. Like they were just like, well, we never thought that you'd need to email people. I was like, well, that's going to be the first thing that I do. We're going to talk to people who have an account that have not placed an order. So then I started thinking, okay, what do I want them to know first about us? What am I willing to give them? Like the carrot, right? So I was like, I'm going to try my best to make a really strong push for what Rev is for our first email. And then eventually I was like, eventually we're going to have to start putting up money. We're going to, so there's our emails that if they don't convert, they start with $5, they move into 10, they move into 15. That's a sort of tactical decision that I have been at odds with CEOs about because they say that I'm training them to wait.
Yeah.
That last email is very clear that that's the highest we're going. And then we offer different free things. Like we have a free app, we have a free online transcribing tool. We have all this free stuff that they've built that's just perfect for sort of carrots that you just keep feeding them and saying,
Yeah.
try it this way, and stickiness is really important, right? So just letting like it's an educational journey that you're putting them on. You're trying to establish who you are in tone and sort of your values in the tone and the way that you approach them. But the content itself and the actual like subject matter at hand is sort of always like, here's something else that you can have. Just, use this, use that. And then by the time, if somebody's using our free app and our free online resources and our free like blog information and all this stuff, and they're not spending money with us, I mean, I would applaud them for being that frugal because by then they should have spent money with us.
So also, you say, I think that answers your question there.
I might have prattled on there on other things that, yeah, thank you.
Yep. There we go. I did want to get to one question, which we talked about earlier. You talked about the difference with Chive is like daily emails. And Rev is occasional. So talk to me with how much you can get away with in each one. Talk about the differences between those.
I mean, the Chive, what it is like you're always thinking about who you are as, like whenever you communicate with anybody about anything, you're always keeping in light like how you think they see you, right? So like the way that you talk to your mom and the way that you talk to your spouse and the way that you talk to a random person on the street, it's always about sort of like this negotiation with what they see as who you are, and that's sort of what you're doing with any other brand. So I have to go into a Chive email as like, what do people expect from this brand? They expect sort of more gross, vulgar, frat boy, all these other things that I'm not really as a person, but I know what those are the things that are going through their mind when they open an email.
Yep.
And then I say, okay, how am I going to meet those expectations, but also or subvert them pleasantly for them to sort of get that sort of jolt of good, what's serotonin, right?
Yeah.
And so that's how I go into it. Now, in a daily newsletter, the stakes are lower because, for the most part, it's just like I'm not selling them anything. I'm just saying, here, click on this stuff.
Right.
It's just media stuff. So like the ask is lower, and that means I can kind of take bigger risks. And the brand is even more boisterous, right? So I can take bigger risks.
Yeah.
And in fact, I'm encouraged to take those risks because a lot of the time what you're trying to avoid is churn from your subscriber. So you don't want you're really just trying to get them engaged every 90 days before they become part of your your sunsetting path, right?
Gotcha.
So in doing that, I'm always trying to think of like what's the style of subject line I want to change completely on a Wednesday compared to the Tuesday before. Like whether
Okay.
it's like a one word imperative with an emoji, or like a description, or like just like outright vulgarity or whatever. You got to keep things, because different people respond to these things differently, right? Yeah. So those are the things that I'm thinking about whenever I first go into a Chive newsletter. And all I'm trying to do is drive clicks. So I'm really just trying to incite like some sort of intrigue into the thing that they're about to go on to the next step.
Yeah. You also mentioned like writing for like the frat boy type vibe of the Chive, which isn't you. Is there ever a challenge to hit that and to
I
embrace
mean,
that type of humor?
it's definitely like performative persona type stuff that I kind of have to channel people I know, right? Um, like one of my friends, Sean, he's very much that guy.
Yeah.
And I have to think about like, what would Sean say? What would Sean laugh at? And that kind of is a good way to sort of think about, like he's the audience. He's also like the kind of guy who would be the one making these sort of jokes. Cause,
Yeah.
it doesn't really align with my like belief system. And I think that like, when we were talking about examples of like, to display here, I was partly saying like, you could show the Chive, but I don't think it's indicative of like what I think I'm really the most successful at. And that's the things that are a little bit closer to who I am as a writer, as a person, that kind of stuff. And I think that goes back to sort of what I was saying about authenticity.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that. I think that it's super important how you're able to say like, yeah, I'm skilled enough and I can do this, and I'll have fun with it, and I'm going to make you money, which you did. You like, I don't even know what the math of it is, but got their open rates from like 8 to 40, 500. But it's not necessarily something that you would say is your passion. You know how to do it. There's still the skill and the science and the conversion elements behind all that.
Mm-hmm.
But
And that can be enough of a passion too. Like some of that is part of it, but then like there's a gauge, right? And like it's like 80% of all the things that I'm interested in. But Rev is a lot closer to the 9500. It's a little bit more throttle that they, like I said, there's complete creative control, whereas the Chive was like, make this chivey.
yeah, that's interesting. And I love the fact that you really have controlled the voice of Rev, and just kind of showing that personality does work. And we're over an hour at this point. I don't know if you've got anything to do.
I can take questions, or I can.
If there's any, if you guys have questions, or if anyone's got some copy you want to get Nick's eyes on to punch up, what I say, if any copy who's fancy you'd like us to tickle, hop in the chat and let us know. We can bring someone on, share some Google Docs, and we're here.
My worst voice fail. That is a good question. I don't know if it's that I went too hard or I went too soft with the Chive. I've definitely been like, well, this is like a bro-y thing, and like bros think this is funny, and then they're like, this is kind of offensive to even us as bros. And I think that's happened, but I can't think of anything off the top of my head.
Man, I want to hear what that was.
Oh man, I
Probably
definitely like over the top vulgarity where I'm like, well, you guys have thought about all this other stuff that's been, I think that there's been times where I thought things were going to be really successful and they weren't, because it just didn't translate. I think whenever I was like a little earlier as a copywriter, I was trying to be overly clever and like cram as many jokes onto the top of a needle, as I possibly could. And that was, trying to prove something. And that's definitely been some fails.
Look at me. Look how funny I am. Yeah.
Right.
That's the stuff that doesn't work.
Yeah, I actually got in trouble. I did get in trouble for some of that newspaper stuff, definitely, because I definitely went too far with those guys, because they were really old school. I remember when ICP came to the Insane Clown Posse.
Oh yeah,
they came to our county fair, and one of the county commissioners or something said they look like mimes, and I was like, I have to run with that. So I went mimes distress local officials, um, and they got a bunch of calls about that. And then there was the biggest thing I ever ended up getting in trouble for was the town fireworks display wasn't going to go forward because there was some really dumb issue. I can't remember what it was, but I put as the headline of the newspaper in like 100-point font, "It's not rocket science," and yeah, they thought that was editorializing. It was maybe a little bit, but yeah, I can't think of anything that was like voice fails.
It's funny. I'm thinking the Insane Clown Posse with the mimes, like mimes incite noise complaint. Um, so yeah, let's see. Newspaper job sounds like it was a great comedic setup for a TV show.
Oh, I would love to write that television program. I would love to do it. It was, but the only thing is that I have to cast like just basically just old white guys because that was my life for forever.
Yeah. Did I think I don't think there's anything else. Remind me. I know we meant to. I'm trying to remember. Did we talk about you crafting the message for Black Lives Matter?
Oh yeah, we really haven't gone into that, but I'm working on that for Rev right now. It's really a difficult situation because of the sort of political
Sure.
atmosphere at work. So I mean, sensitive comms are something that it's hard to it's hard. I think that what's happened, at least with Rev, is that I've been pigeonholed into this like idea that I'm the funny copywriter and that's just like the skill set that I am. And then and then that one communications was sensitive and that I did well there, but it's like, this is such a big sensitive matter that and I think I think a lot of writers have that problem of getting pigeonholed as a type.
Mm-hmm.
And to fight against that is to sort of say, I like to show things. I basically wrote the emails and everything. They're done and they're in front of the C-level guys. But it's kind of funny because like I feel like I can make lots and lots of people do things based on good emails, but I really can't. It's really hard to talk to C-level executive teams and getting them to buy in has been something that I really would like to get better at.
Yeah. No, it's funny. That's interesting because you mentioned that you get pigeonholed. I've had that before where people are like, this is like, you're really good at what you do, but we need someone else for this. And a lot of times it's really not true. The personality and the comedy is something that you can pepper in, but the foundation that everything that you're doing, as we've seen here, is built on conversion techniques. It's built on understanding your audience. It's built on persuasion. It's really, there's a science to everything that we do. We just happen to be funny also. And it's unfortunate that actually can work against us in certain areas.
Definitely. Yeah. And I mean, they're very open. They're just engineers. So they're very much like these people are these people and these people are these people.
Yeah.
And so I'm very much, I'm just trying to get them to buy in. And I think that I believe in the message that I'm about to send, but they're also very like, do we want to ruffle any political feathers? Do we want to be a political company? It's like, it's not really political. And then trying to get in them to understand like the nuance behind this, that it's not really political, and that neutrality is in itself sort of not apolitical anymore.
Yeah.
And that there's even talking on a business level and not trying to get too much into morality, which I think there is a moral argument here, but even saying to the business side of their brains, like, look, the risk here is not saying anything. The risk to the business is not saying something.
Yeah.
So
yeah, it's something I think we're all struggling with. Even me, I put out a Facebook post and a LinkedIn post that I think addressed it in my way, but I didn't send out an email because I just don't feel like it's my place with my role and what I teach that I'm the one to teach it when I'm still figuring it out myself. So,
right.
But I mean, based on the way that you handle the whole COVID-19 situation and your understanding of what the message should be versus what everyone else is doing, I mean, I think personally, I would have no problem with if I was the C-level of Rev, I would know that you're the guy. I think that you're very
Thank you. Yeah, I think they do know that, but they're sort of like arguing amongst themselves and trying to figure that out. So we'll see what happens. I'm actually about to go into a meeting later today with them. A lot of them are on the West Coast, so we'll see what the idea is, and the fact that it is now. I've moved up. I no longer have 5 bosses above me. I have 3.
All right. Well
yeah.
done.
So
as some of the freelancers here are like, this is why I don't.
Yeah.
Man, this is fantastic. Are there any last minute questions from you guys? I know a lot of people have had to jump at the hour. But I think at that point, we could probably wrap up. Nick, is there anything you want to plug? Someone's asking how to get on Rev emails and.
Just if you guys have any other questions, feel free to reach out to me on LinkedIn. I really, I'm not trying to sell anything or anything. I just wanted to be a resource. That's where you can find me, and I'll accept anything. And any questions, or if you want me to look at copy, I'm glad to do that too. And I really actually appreciate you guys listening to me talk about this. This is the first time I've ever done it. So, well, second time. I was talking a little bit more about email tactics. The last time I did something like this, but this is where my heart's at. I always say I'm a writer at heart, and the marketing stuff is just, I sold my soul to the marketing devil. So
sometimes we got to do that, especially when you have babies. So.
He pays really well.
And Holly says that you've got a course about how to convince your C-levels.
Is there?
No, Holly, she thinks that you should make one.
Oh gosh,
convince your C-levels to go with certain ideas.
I was able to convince the Chive guy, but he's a completely different personality than the guy who started Rev. He actually started Upwork too. He's a brain, man. He's very smart. So
I had no idea.
Yeah, I didn't know that until a couple weeks ago. So
interesting.
Yeah.
Nice. All right, man. I can go off on like a dozen tangents right now, but this has been awesome. Thank you so much, and go forth and write funny things.
Thanks, guys.
All right. Thanks, everybody.